In this course, since the starting, we are talking about many research misconducts, ethical issues on behalf of authors. But ethics are not only associated with the author or the researcher. Ethics are also there in the publications or the people who are involved in the publication process. So the whole idea of ethical practices in research is incomplete if we are not discussing about publication ethics. And to discuss about it in brief, I am here with you, your course instructor, Gaurav Singh from School of Education. And today we are going to talk about some basic aspects associated with publication ethics. What publication ethics are? These are basically the ethical standards for publication exist to ensure high quality research publication, public trust in the research findings, and people receive its credit for their work and ideas. There are many publishers which are having their own publication ethics codes, but most of the publishers around the world are the member of a committee on public ethics called COPE, and they follow the COPE guidelines. What COPE is and what are its suggestions? Let us have a brief look on it. The Committee on Publication Ethics, COPE, is an international forum of editors and publishers for peer-reviewed journals, and this agency basically provides the code of conduct and the best practices guidelines which defines the publication ethics and advises editors on how to handle the cases of research and publication misconduct. There are certain core practices area which has been suggested by the COPE. You may find all details on the COPE website or in the publicationethics.org. The common core practices which are being suggested by the COPE are allegations of misconduct, authorship and contributorship, complaints and appeals, conflict of interest or competing interest, date and reproducibility, ethical oversights, intellectual property, journal management, peer review processes, and post-publication discussions and corrections. So in every category, the detailed guidelines have been suggested by the COPE. For a good publication, a checklist has been suggested by NCBI, and in this checklist, the first is approval and consent. Whether you have the approval of the relevant regulatory authority, institutional review board, or the ethical committee. If it is a medical type of research, then have they registered for their clinical trials. Whatever documents they are proposing or presenting in their research, whether they have the informed consent. What informed consent means? The subject is aware that the data which he or she is providing will be used for the research and publication purpose. The second dimension is data accuracy, falsification, and fabrication. We have already discussed about falsification and fabrication in a video. But if you are putting it in your ethical checklist, then you need to ensure that is there any manipulation of the material, equipment, process, or data? Have the data has been checked double for the accuracy? Is there any lurking fake data? Whether the concept of self-plagiarism has been addressed or not, whether the researcher is using their own previous work or copied others' work, whether they have done so, have they cited it properly or not, do they have the written permission to reproduce the material, figure, or table from the original author or the publisher. Then there are some issues related to submission fraud, whether the researcher has submitted the same publication at 2 or 3 places for the publications, whether the part of this work or the entire work has been published earlier, the excessive citation of own publication has been done just to increase the citation index. We will talk about that later in this video. Then the ethics of the authorship, whether the publisher and author are in a pre-agreed order or they have gone in any agreement that who will have the authorship later on, who will have the copyright on the content later on, whether you have signed any agreement with the co-authors, whether co-authors are aware about the content to be published, they have access to or hold themselves responsible for the data and its interpretation. Is there any ghost author as a guest author? The ghost author means that the person who has not worked in the area, but he or she has been included as an author without any work. Conflict of interest. Have you declared the relevant interest and relationship that could be seen as influencing to your findings, either financially or clinically? There are certain dimensions like article submission. A good research journal should ensure that all the manuscripts are subject to the peer review and they are expected to meet the standards of academic excellence. The submission should be considered for peer reviewing only if it is approved by the editor initially. The identity of the peer reviewer should remain anonymous to the author always. Citation manipulation. Please check that the authors whose submitted manuscripts are found to include the citation whose primary purpose is to increase the number of citations in a given author's work or to publish the article in a particular journal. If it is so, they may incur sanctions. The editors and reviewers are not subjected or expected to ask the authors to include the reference merely to increase the citation. There are certain issues of conflict of interest. It is also known as competing interest. It happens generally when two associations or two organizations are working on same area, or even two people are working on same area. They are aware of each other's work, but they are not considering it before the publication. They are not discussing or taking any consent. There are generally 5 or 6 types of conflict of interest. The first is financial, means the funding and the other payment issues. Whether any conflict of interest is associated with the financial obligations or payments are being given to the author or the publisher. Then the affiliation, the organization, the institution or the body or the board to which you both are associated, and whether the author is the part of even advisory panel of the journal. Generally, author should not publish a paper in a journal with whom he or she is associated in any way. Intellectual property like the patents and trademarks, which is the biggest conflicts of interest area. Then personal interests like friends, family, relationship and other close personal connections. Are you going to quote those names or the nature of relationship with your near ones without taking their consent? Ideology. Sometimes whatever you publish or write, it may contradict to the belief of a political or religious body. Whether your research is having such sound arguments and evidences so that you can counter the popular beliefs or ideologies. If not, then you may fall in trouble. Then academic, the competitors or someone whose work is critiqued also create a conflict of interest issue. Let us see what citation indexes are. If you read Wikipedia, you will find that a citation index is a kind of bibliographic index or an index of citation between the publications, which is allowing the users to easily establish which later document cite and which earlier document. So a form of citation index was basically first found in 20th century Hebrew religious literature, but later it has been found at many places, and in the 18th century it was made popular by the citers like Shepard citation. Citation indexing basically makes the links between the books and the articles that were written in the past and the article which are making the reference to or cited in the newer publications. In other words, it is a technique that it allows us to trace the use of an idea in an earlier document and forward it to others who have used it. The evidence that we take as indicating this relationship between the earlier research and subsequent researchers, these are the references, the footnotes and the endnotes in more recent work. There are many citation indexes. The popular ones are Web of Sciences, Clarivate Analytics and Scopus by Elsewhere. These two are very common nowadays. But many other citation indexes are also there, like ICI, Indian Citation Index. Then some people consider even Google also as a citation index, Google Scholar, but Google Scholar is not exactly the citation index. But as I have talked about the Google Scholar, so let us try to know what Google Scholar is. Google Scholar, if you go on the page, you will read a line at the bottom, stand on the shoulders of giants. So who are the giants? Giants are you and your publications. So your scholarship is being valued, counted. Google Scholar make it public, and it also counts how you have been cited anywhere. This is just a page from a Google Scholar which has been taken from one author's page. You will see that the title of the paper, how many times it was cited, and in the year in which it was published, everything comes here, and on the basis of it, in Google Scholar there are two types of indexes, which is called H index and is the I index. H index basically corresponds to a scientist's H of his or her N publications have been cited at least H times each, while rest of the N papers have less than the H citation, each in last 5 years. So it basically considers the citation of your published papers in last 5 years. If someone is having score 3 in I-10 index, it means that his or her 3 papers in last 5 years have been cited more than 10 times. Let us come to the Indian solution, and the solution lies with Consortium for Academic Research and Ethics, CARE. This is basically a body established by UGC. UGC has issued a quality mandate in order to match the global standards of high quality research, and on November 28, 2018, a public notice was issued by the UGC to announce the establishment of a dedicated consortium for academic research and ethics, which is called CARE. Earlier on the UGC website, there was a list of journals in which the publications were considered as UGC approved publications, but later that list was replaced by UGC CARE list with effect from 14th June 2019. So if you are having any publication after 14th June 2019 and the journal is not on the UGC approved list, it will not be considered for your academic benefit in your career. So what this CARE is and how it works. Under CARE, a cell for journal analysis has been established in SPPU Pune, which is a UGC cell, and Savitribai Phule University. And there is a center of CPE, Center for Publication Ethics. There is a Center for Publication Ethics at Savitribai Phule Pune University, which create and maintain UGC CARE list. It is a dynamic list. So at every quarterly, means in every 3 months, this list is being updated. Generally on CARE list, you will find 2 groups, Group A and Group B. Group 1. In the Group 1, most of the journals which are found qualified through the UGC CARE protocols. And in the Group 2, all the journals which are in the globally recognized databases like Scopus and Web of Sciences. So those journals have been listed in Group 2. The UGC CARE protocol is having 3 dimensions. Part 1, where the basic information about the journal is collected. Part 2, there are certain primary and secondary criteria in Part 3, which are being checked before including any journal in UGC CARE list. And if any UGC CARE list journal started, demeaning or not following all the criteria which has been suggested, then that journal is also being removed from UGC CARE list. For that, what you need to do, you visit to UGC website, UGC CARE website, create your login ID and password by using your Gmail ID or any ID which you are using, whether institutional or individual. Then it will give you a user ID and password through which you can log into the page. When you will log in, you will find that there is at the center UGC CARE list and a select button. In the select region, you can select it on the basis of different domains, but the common domains are title, ISSN number, publisher, subject or language of publication. So all the journals have been listed or classified in these 5 broad categories. So you can find the journal of your use by visiting it. For example, here you can see that the list has been searched with the keyword education. So total 43 journals have been enlisted here, and you can see the list on the web page. But when UGC CARE list was there, a very common phenomena has emerged called clone journals. Jalian and Mahboobi in 2014 wrote about clone journals, is that clone journals are the web pages which are counterfeit mirror of an authentic journal that exploits the title and ISSN number of legitimate journal. So they create a replica, a forged replica of an authentic journal. They keep the title and ISSN number almost same or a very slight variation. People get confused. They send mail to them that we are such and such journal, we are UGC CARE journal, you just send us a paper. People send the paper, people sometimes pay the publication fee, and later they found there is no such journal or no such publication. That's why these journals are also known as hijacked journals, and you can identify these with the following characteristics: that clone journals copy the name of the journal, their credentials, and develop a mirror image. Most of such journals are in online mode and they charge huge fee. How they come to know about you? They collect the information from various conferences, contact authors, and load them for early publications. If you visit the UGC CARE list, you will find in both the categories the name of the original journal which is in the UGC CARE list, and almost the similar name is there in the clone journal list. Sometimes they create a URL also with the same name. So with this, what I tried to tell you that when we are talking about publication ethics, along with the researcher, to ensure ethical practices, the responsibility of the publisher, The responsibility of the government agencies is also there. So when we are talking about research ethics and plagiarism, we must be aware about different practices which are associated with it, whether it is ethical guidelines by the agencies like COPE, whether it is the concept of clone journal or careless journal, or it is the idea of citation. We all should be aware about all these such things. I hope that with this, you will be able to identify a good journal in which you want to publish your paper, which is acceptable as well as which is being considered as an authentic publication. You will be able to bring the ethical practices in your publications. Thank you very much.